Revelations chapter 9 tonight. Revelations 9. Go ahead and turn there and we'll get going. We're going to try and get through this whole chapter tonight. I'm going to try real hard. There's a lot to talk about. Starting with Revelation chapter 9, verse 1. And the fifth angel sounded, and I saw a star fall from heaven unto the earth, and to him was given the key of the bottomless pit. Okay, what happens in this verse? A star fell from heaven. Let's contrast that with another story about a star. What happened when Jesus was born? A star of Bethlehem. Did this star rise up out of the middle of nowhere, or did it just appear? It appeared. And obviously it was bright, and obviously it was somewhere high up in the sky where people could see it. Matthew 2:2 says, the wise men are talking, "Where is the one who has been born King of the Jews? We saw his star when it rose and have come to worship him." Obviously, when Jesus was born, God was trying to save his people. God was trying to reestablish a covenant with his people. God was trying to work things out. The thing that he did to celebrate this and to help people find Jesus was cause a great and magnificent star to rise up into the heavens. How does that contrast with this verse we just read? This one's falling down. What's the difference between Matthew 2:2 and Revelation 9? In Matthew, God is trying to save. What's God trying to do here? Judge and destroy. What's significant about this star in verse 1? Has the key to the bottomless pit. Anybody else remember a story about a star falling from the Old Testament? Isaiah 12:12 says, "How art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning? How art thou cut down to the ground, which didst weaken the nations?" Who is Lucifer? The devil. Some translations in Isaiah 12:12 don't use the word Lucifer. They use the bright morning star. Those two are kind of interchangeable at that point in the Bible. I think it's really interesting that Lucifer is referred to as a star falling from heaven. And I think we can infer that in Revelation here 9:1, this really well fits with Isaiah 12:12, because this star, like you said, Joe, falling from heaven has the key to the pit. And who's in charge of the pit? Satan, the devil, Lucifer. Is John giving us another vision of Satan falling from heaven here? I keep telling y'all, Revelation ties really well into the Old Testament. A lot of Old Testament there. Okay, but I jump ahead of myself. The key was given to him to the bottomless pit. Is this bottomless pit hell, or is it a bottomless pit? Jesus has keys to everything. This is referred to, it doesn't actually refer to it as hell, it just refers to it as a bottomless pit. In Jewish thought, that could mean something like the ocean. To the Jews of this day, the ocean didn't have a bottom to it. Now, we have wonderful submarines and robots that can go down and tell us that the ocean bottom is where the ocean bottom is, don't we? Well, yeah. But in Jesus' day, they had no idea unless they could see it with their own eyes. So for them to go out in the Mediterranean, and there's spots in the Mediterranean where it's pretty deep, to them the ocean would be a bottomless pit because they would have no idea of where the bottom was. So, we'll move on. Verse 2. He opened the bottomless pit, and there arose smoke out of the pit, as the smoke of a great furnace, and the sun and the air were darkened by reasons of the smoke and the pit. How many of y'all remember us talking about smoke earlier when we were studying Revelation? Where did we talk about smoke earlier with Revelations? What's that? Volcanoes, yes. You know, we talked about how smoke in the volcanoes. There was another spot where we talked about smoke. Smoke in heaven. The incense, the smoke from the incense, the smoke of the prayers of the elders rising up to please the nostrils of God. Have y'all ever smelled incense smoke? Do y'all like it? It's supposed to smell nice, isn't it? I don't like it. It's a little too heavy. Have you ever smelled burning sulfur? That's not a happy smell either, is it? Yeah, rotten eggs. I think it's very interesting that a couple of chapters ago we talked about how the smoke rose up to facilitate the prayers of the faithful going to God. But here, this smoke is denoting something completely different. What's the old saying, where there's smoke, there's... What goes on in hell? Fire. Later on, we're going to talk about Jesus casting someone into a lake where the fire is never quenched. So if we have fires in hell that are burning unstoppable, what's going to be a byproduct of those fires? Smoke. Kind of gives us a reinforcement of our vision of hell, that when, this bottomless pit is opened up, the smoke rolls out of it. It's very interesting. Where have the last four problems, where have the last four judgments come from? They've come from God, but physically, where have they come from? They've come from heaven, haven't they? The angels in heaven, the four judgments that have happened so far, they've been the work of angels. John here has started a new chapter to show us that the coming judgment, that these plagues, that these trumpets that are about to sound are so bad, they can only come from one place. These things are so bad they can only come from hell itself. So let's jump in and see what's going to happen here. Verse 3. And there came out of the smoke locusts upon the earth, and unto them was given power as the scorpions of the earth have power. Anybody in here ever been stung by a scorpion? Scorpions freak me out. I don't like scorpions. They say we have scorpions here in North Carolina. Have you ever seen one? I'm sure y'all have seen them. Scorpions, according to the Mayo Clinic, when a scorpion stings you, most of the time the sting produces pain, which can be intense, numbness and tingling in the area around the sting, slight swelling in the area around the sting. There can be some more severe symptoms, which would include muscle twitching, unusual head, neck, and eye movements, drooling, sweating, vomiting, high blood pressure, accelerated heart rate, things like that. Do scorpions kill you when they sting you? They can, but it's not common. Usually it just hurts really bad. Now, these locusts that are coming up from the pit of hell, they're a little bit different than normal locusts, aren't they? Do we have to do calisthenics tonight? How are these locusts, and you can go on and read the next 2 or 3 verses, how are these locusts different than normal locusts? They're going to bite and hurt. Has anybody in here ever seen a locust swarm? All right. We're going to get all science nerdy here for a minute just because I like being a nerd. Yeah. Do you have any idea how many locusts are in a locust swarm? Bunch, millions. The UN actually has an agency whose task is to track and deal with locusts. And I got a lot of my information tonight from them. A locust swarm is categorized as anywhere between 40 and 80 million locusts in a 1 square kilometer area. Now let me put that in perspective. Anybody got a quarter? Has anybody got a quarter? I want you to imagine a quarter. You take that quarter and you hold it flat, and then you take it and you hold it up. You know what that is? That's 1 square inch worth of space. In a locust swarm, there is 1 locust per every square inch of space. Does that kind of wrap your mind around how dense these locust swarms can be? It is said that when these swarms fly over, it blots out the sun. People say that they will be standing in a field and there will be a huge building, a multi-story building right beside them. And when the locusts come, they cannot even see the building. Locusts aren't much bigger than some of the grasshoppers we have around here. They're pretty tiny little things. But when you have so many, it changes things. Joe, you said it was like fire. There's 2 things about fire that remind us of locusts. Number 1, you ever been out near a fire and hear the fire crackling as it burns all the dry grass? People say that is what the locusts sound like when they're eating. And believe it or not, locusts do a better job of destroying the land and the vegetation than fire does. When locusts attack someplace, they eat anything that has even any vegetable content in it. They eat the plants. There are reports of them eating the leather. There's reports of them eating wicker. There's even reports in Egypt of locusts landing on a door and eating the varnish off of a door. Now, when you have 80 million little things, can you imagine the destruction that would cause? All right, jump up now. Wave your hands in the air.
I can't help but think about it on TV. Saw an airplane going through a swarm of locusts. Airplane couldn't even breathe. Went down, couldn't do anything.
It's, people in Africa, they set fires to try to divert the locust. They shoot off cannons to try to divert the locust. But so many times these locusts, they go and it is an unstoppable army. We never think about us being defeated by a little tiny bug. But when you have 80 million, there's not much you can do. But like I said, these aren't normal locusts, are they? Verse 3 again. Out of the smoke, and there came out of the smoke locusts upon the earth, and unto them was given power as the scorpions of the earth have power. We're going to read on to verse 6. And it was commanded them that they should not hurt the grass of the earth, neither any green thing, neither any tree, but only those men which had not the seal of God in their foreheads. Now wait a minute. I said to you earlier, when locusts attack a place, there is absolutely nothing green left. They eat even after they don't need food anymore. People say that even if you have a poisonous plant, even if you have a plant that tastes horrible, if locusts come, they will eat that as well. That's just the mentality that they have. These insects, when they swarm like this, they will eat anything that they can eat. Now, God has commanded, or someone has commanded right here, that these locusts, they would not eat any blade of grass or any tree. Why is that? They were commanded not to because their purpose was not to destroy the vegetation. Their purpose was to hurt people. Their sole intent is to hurt people. Which people are they out to hurt? Ones that don't have the seal of God, the unbelievers. How do you think the saints that are underneath the altar feel about this now? Wasn't too long ago they were crying out for justice, weren't they? All right, verse 5. And to them it was given that they should not kill them, but that they should be tormented 5 months. And their torment was at the torment of a scorpion when he striketh the man. And in those days shall men seek death and shall not find it, and shall desire to die, and death shall flee from them. Okay, let's jump back just a second. Who gave this authority to the locust? Where does it say that? It was either God or the devil. But let's be honest, do we know which one said this? He doesn't say it in Scripture, does it? Let us not assume something that's not there, okay? That's how problems start. We don't know who commanded this. It simply says, and it was commanded them. All right. Why do you think they're going to have power for 5 months? You know, I saw a really, really crazy commentary this afternoon. This is just, I talked to you about people who take this book and try to make something that's not there out of it. I saw a commentary this afternoon that said that 5 months was equal to 150 prophetic years. Oh, it gets better. Oh, it gets better. And what the 150 prophetic years was the years from Muhammad establishing Islam until the first caliphate in the Muslim world, which was 150 years. But really? Some guy out there is trying to equate these locusts living for 5 months to the rise of Islam. I'm sorry, it hurt my mind thinking of that.
Back in chapter 8, verse 7, it tells us that all green grass burned up. Here it says not to hurt the grass. So did this happen before that?
No, this happened after it. But what happens after you burn up grass? Do you know the healthiest thing that can happen to the grassland in the Midwest? Gets burned up. And they say that about a week after it gets burned up, it's pretty green again. God destroyed it all, but it's still coming back. All the things that we've talking about up to this point, God has been showing a piece of His power. He's been showing parts of it. He hasn't unleashed fully His judgment yet. So odds are, if you ask my opinion, it was burned up, but like grass is apt to do, because we know there's been at least, a little time here because these locusts have 5 months to do it. And I don't know about your yard, but 5 months is about, 5 days is all I need to have green. Not grass, but weeds. All right, why do these locusts live for 5 months? Why do they have power for 5 months? That's how long locusts live, 5 months. That's a simple answer. Locust natural lifespan is 5 months. So for 5 months, they're going to torment people. Now, the Scripture says that they are going to have the power of a scorpion. They're going to sting, and it's going to hurt. How many of you in here have ever been stung by a honeybee? Okay. I actually did some research today. There is an insect that when it bites you, it is said that the chemicals within this insect react with your body and produce the most intense pain that a human can feel. There's an ant in South America called the bullet ant. And when they say when this thing bites you, the venom in it, it lasts anywhere from 4 to 24 hours. But I watched a clip today. Did anybody ever watch on the Discovery Channel a guy by the name of the Venom Hunter? Yeah, I never saw him either, but I'll just give you a picture. This guy was probably about my size, but unlike me, he was all muscle. And all he did was go around the world experimenting with poisonous animals to learn about their venom. This guy was tough. He got bit by one of these ants and he was crying like a little girl. They said that in the list of the 10 most painful insect bites, fire ant was barely even on the scale, and this bullet ant was way on the top. I say all that to say this. God is going to give these locusts power to hurt. Now, do you think this hurt is going to be a mild bee sting hurt, or do you think it's going to be something severe? It's going to be severe. It's going to be so severe that Scripture says people are going to wish that they were dead. People are going to seek out death. Why is God doing this to the unbelievers at this point? Yeah, look what God has done so far. I mean, God has literally cast a mountain into the sea, hasn't He? God has made it dark, hasn't He? He's turned water into blood, hasn't He? I'm not mixing up my Egyptian plagues with this plague, am I? God has done some miraculous things, hasn't He? But there are still unbelievers. You ever have somebody in your life that's just a wee bit hard-headed? Don't point. Sometimes when you have somebody who's just a wee bit hard-headed, do you have to do something drastic to get their attention? So maybe if casting a mountain into the ocean isn't working, maybe if killing off, a third of land animals, a third of sea creatures, maybe if that's not working, maybe this inflicting pain upon the non-believers, such intense pain like they've never felt before, maybe that will open their eyes to what's going on. I would hope so, because come on. It's interesting, though, that Revelation says men will seek death, but will God allow them to die? Right. Reminds me of the book of Job. What's the book of Job about? Suffering. Book of Job starts out by God bragging to the devil about how good his faithful servant is. The devil says, well, he's only faithful, he only loves you because you've given him all this stuff. God says, fine, take all the stuff away. That doesn't work. The devil goes back and says, well, he only loves you because you've given him health. What does God say to the devil after that? You do anything you want, but don't take his life. Job chapter 3, verse 20 says, wherefore is light given to him that is in misery, and life unto the bitter in soul, which long for death, but it cometh not, and dig for it more than for hidden treasures, which rejoice exceedingly and are glad when they can find the grave. Why is light given to a man whose way is hid, and whom God hath hedged in? Kind of reminds me, this passage in Job, about what people will be saying this passage in Revelations comes true, don't you think? Why are we alive? Why do we have to suffer like this? It is part of God's plan. It is part of God's purpose. It is the will of God. But let's move on. Verse 7. And the shapes of locusts were like unto horses prepared unto battle. And on their heads were, as it were, crowns like gold, and their faces were as the faces of men. And they had hair as the hair of women, and their teeth were as the teeth of lions. They had breastplates as if were breastplates of iron, and the sound of their wings was as the sound of chariots of many horses running to battle. They had tails like scorpions, and there were stings in their tail, and their power was to hurt men 5 months. Is there anything scarier looking than a hybrid, half animal, half person? It's kind of freaky, isn't it? I think God has designed these things specifically to instill fear in people. You know, I'm pretty good about seeing an animal out of the corner of my eye and knowing, hey, that was a deer, or, that's a bear, or, a raccoon or something like that. But if I saw something like this, even before I knew it could hurt somebody, it would still scare me, don't you think? God is not messing around anymore. Yeah. Of course, he had a pretty good design in the cockroach with that, but hey. God is sending a message. But it's a message that he sent before. The book of Joel, chapter 2, says, Blow ye the trumpet in Zion, and sound an alarm in my holy mountain. Let all the inhabitants of the land tremble, for the day of the Lord cometh, for it is nigh at hand. A day of darkness and of gloominess, a day of clouds and of thick darkness, as the morning spread upon the mountains. A great people and a strong, there hath not been ever the like, neither shall be any more after it, even to the years of many generations. A fire devoureth before them, and behind them a flame burneth. The land is as at the Garden of Eden before them, and behind them a desolate wilderness. Nothing shall escape them. The appearance of them is the appearance of horses, and as horsemen so shall they run. Like the noise of chariots on top of mountains shall they leap. Like the noise of a flame of fire that devoureth the stubble, as a strong people set in battle array. Before their face the people shall be much pained. All faces shall gather blackness. They shall run like mighty men. They shall climb the wall like men of war, and they shall march everyone on his way, and they shall not break their ranks. This was the prophet Joel speaking long before John even walked the earth. You think Joel was foreshadowing this army that was coming out of the pit as well? This unstoppable army that sounds like a fire and can leap and overcome anything?
This day of the Lord time here is associated with wrath, too.
Mm-hmm.
The day of Christ is associated with full redemption, which is already passed.
We tend to think we can push God and push God and push God. We tend to think that God's always going to forgive us. There's going to come a day when forgiveness ends. There's going to come a day when that choice that we have is going to be taken away from us. And if we haven't made the choice by then, we out of luck. All right. You know what's different besides the way they look and the way they act about these locusts? Somebody look up Proverbs chapter 30, verse 27. Anybody found it yet? All right, Steve, read it out to us, please, sir. The locusts have no king, it says in Proverbs. Something's changed, hasn't it? We read verse 11, it says, And they had a king over them, which is the angel of the bottomless pit, whose name in the Hebrew tongue is Abaddon, but in the Greek tongue hath his name Apollyon. What does that mean? It means destroyer. Both in Greek and in Hebrew, it means destroyer. These locusts aren't your standard run-of-the-mill locust. I can't tell you how many millions of dollars today is spent on trying to figure out what causes locusts to act the way they do. Because if you have a single solitary locust, he's going to sit there and he's going to act just like a grasshopper. But if you have a swarm of locusts, they're going to become this eating machine that destroys everything in their path. Even today, we spend millions of dollars trying to figure out why locusts do the things they do. Revelation says that there's going to be a king that controls these locusts, a king that guides them. Abaddon in the Hebrew and Apollyon in the Greek. Like I said, both these words mean destruction, but there's also another meaning here. Some people say that John was taking a swipe at one of the local deities. Does anybody know of the Greek god Apollo? You ever heard that name before? Apollo was worshipped in the area where John was at the time. There was a major temple to Apollo in Asia Minor. Apollo kind of sounds like Apollyon, doesn't it? But there's something even funnier than that. You know what one of the symbols of Apollo was? The locust. The locust was a holy animal to those who worshiped Apollo. Maybe John's taking a swipe at one of the local cults here. Who knows? We'll move on. One woe is past, and behold, there come two woes more hereafter. And the sixth angel sounded, and I heard a voice from the four horns of the golden altar which is before God, saying to the sixth angel which had the trumpet, Loose the four angels which are bound in the great river Euphrates. And the four angels were loosed, which were prepared for an hour and a day and a month and a year, for to slay the third part of men. And the number of the army of the horsemen went 200,000. And I heard the number of them. And thus I saw the horses in the vision, and them that sat on them, having breastplates of fire and of jacinth and brimstone. And the heads of the horses were as the heads of lions, and out of their mouths issued fire and smoke and brimstone. By these was the third part of men killed, by the fire and by the smoke and by the brimstone which issued out of their mouths. For their power was in their mouths and in their tails. For their tails were like unto serpents, and had heads, and with them they do hurt. All right. If we walk outside right now and see a bunch of grasshoppers running around with scorpion tails, that's going to be kind of freaky, right? It's going to be a lot more freaky if we go outside and we see horses that are running around with the heads of lions and snakes sticking out their rear. That's going to scare me just period, and I'm saved. That's still going to freak me out, though. The horror of what is to come. The horror of what awaits people. But the horror goes beyond just what these creatures look like. Where are these horsemen coming from? It says in the last part of verse 14, the angels that let them loose are where? The Euphrates River. The Euphrates River was a very important landmark in the day of John because it marked the boundary of the Roman world. Right across that river, there was a tribe of people that we've spoken of a little bit called the Parthians. The Parthians, if you remember, were very skilled horsemen. When the Parthians went into battle, they rode on horses, and they were deadly efficient on their horse. It is said that the Parthian cavalry had a neat trick that they could do. The Parthian cavalry was the only cavalry of the day that was able to shoot an arrow at you while they were chasing towards you. And after they ran by you, the Parthian cavalry was so skilled they were able to turn around in the saddle and shoot an arrow at you as they ran away. The people of John's day and age, the people that John was writing to, lived near this border, relatively. They knew about Parthian raids. The Parthians were all the time raiding the Roman territory in order to conquer, in order to steal, in order to gather slaves to take back, in order to sow fear. So with that said, as John's people are reading this letter and they hear that these great number of horsemen are coming from the river Euphrates, that was not a symbolic thing to them. That was a real and ever-present daily threat to their lives. It was something that they feared even before John wrote about something coming from that area. Scripture's not written in a bubble. Scripture's written in reality, right? What would it have meant to people to know that God was going to use something that has oppressed them for so long as part of His plan to end the world? All right. What's unique about this sixth trumpet, by the way? We haven't talked about this yet. What's the most unique thing about this? Well, they all had trumpeters. What? No. What happens to people in this judgment? They die. Think about all the other judgments leading up to this. The judgments leading up to this were fierce and they were bad, but were they specifically meant to kill people? No. Yet this sixth judgment is going to kill 1/3 of the men left alive. They're not meant to hurt. They're not meant to take away. This plague, this judgment, this seal's only purpose is to destroy 1/3 of mankind. God's done playing around, don't you think? God's kind of like a good parent, isn't He? When a child does wrong, the first thing a good parent does is gently tries to correct the child. And when that gentle correction doesn't work, what do? A little firmer. Till finally you get to that point where you're as firm as you can be. Has God tried to get these people's attention and get them to change? Has God gone way beyond any reasonable action in order to get these people's attention and call them to where they need to be? I mean, come on, I go back to that whole mountain to this ocean thing. It's pretty serious. God has done some amazing things. We have seen some things happen so far in Revelations that would make our heads spin. We have been frightened by a mountain falling in the ocean. We have been frightened by water turning into blood. We have been frightened by the stars falling from the sky. We have been frightened by locusts that are crossed with scorpions flying up and taking over and for 5 months inflicting pain. We have been terrified by horsemen coming, horses with the faces of lion and the tails of snakes that have killed 1 out of every 3 people. Have we talked about some scary stuff so far? Yes? But I'm going to tell you something. To me personally, The scariest thing in Revelation happens in these two verses, 20 and 21. And the rest of the men which were not killed by these plagues, yet repented not of the works of their hands, that they should not worship devils and the idols of gold and silver and brass and stone and of wood, which neither can see nor hear nor walk. Neither repented they of their murders, nor of their sorceries, nor of their fornications, nor of their thefts. What is it going to take? God has done so much, and now 1/3 of humanity has died. 1/3 has visibly been killed by what can only be described as beings not of this world. Yet people still refuse to believe. How stubborn can we be?
You know, I don't know if you've ever heard this or not. There's a saying about some lost and godly people, better to rule in hell than to serve in heaven. That's just about the way they feel.
I think that was Milton that said that. Better to rule in hell than serve in heaven. I don't think so. People become so convinced that what they think is right that even when literally the world falls apart around them, they will not change their mind. What does that say about us? To me, that says we need to get out there and start trying some more. And it also says not to get discouraged when I try so hard and somebody still doesn't accept God. It gives me encouragement because if they're not going to change their minds when they see all this, what am I? Should we still be out there trying to save people? Yes. We are always going to have people who reject. We are always going to have people who say no. But that is never an excuse not to go out there and try. Personally, after seeing all this, I don't think I could have any doubt. But I still run into people who say to me, Trey, if I just had a sign from God that He was real, I would believe. And I just look at them and say, what do you see every day? What do you experience every day? Because when we get right down to it, the miracles that we see every day, I'm going to go out there and say it. The miracles that I see every day, they're on par with what's in this book. And when you think about it, the miracle of you just being here and being alive, that says a lot right there. So, all right. That's good for chapter 9 tonight. Do y'all have any questions or comments?
Seems to me, Pastor, that you mentioned those that, when we're worshiping, what false gods, evidently it was easier to them to do that than to worship the true and living God.
Mm-hmm. Look at how many people today worship false gods because it's easier to worship false gods than it is to worship God. Look how many people worship something that they make up because it's easier for them. I mean, we're the society that wants everything nice and easy, aren't we? If there's any type of personal commitment, if there's any type of I need you to do this, that turns a lot of people off to religion.
Stepping out of the box.
Yeah, asking them to do anything, that turns off a lot of people right there.
And, when we think of a false idol or a false god, I think of, a statue or something things all in the world that we put before God.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, that's our God.
The sad thing is, when we get to heaven and we see what were some of our false gods, we're going to be really surprised. Because unfortunately, I know too many people whose false god lives in a wonderful frame on the center wall in their house. They worship their family more than they worship God. I know way too many people whose false god lives in a nice piece of leather in their back pocket. And, oh no, I don't worship that. Well, you jump a lot higher when it comes to your family or money than you do when it comes to God. And I'm not preaching against family, but I am saying, God. You can love your family and love God. So, all right, any other thoughts, comments? Calisthenics. Make you do jumping jacks. All right, quick announcements. Don't forget, Sunday night we're having our ice cream social after we have our missions presentation about our trip to Manio. And Tuesday we're going to be doing our free breakfast again. I haven't put the signs out. I'm going to do that tomorrow. But Tuesday morning, if you would like to come out and help with that, we would truly appreciate your involvement with that. We have a wonderful ministry going on with that, both to the community and to ourselves, because it's fun to get together and chat and do that, isn't it? Ed? It's going to be a little bit different this time because we're actually buying the biscuits pre-made, so we don't have to cook. I don't know how economics works, but it's cheaper for us to buy bigger biscuits already made than it is for us to buy the stuff and make the biscuits. But instead of sitting around the kitchen and cooking, we're going to sit around the kitchen and we're going to write little cards of encouragement and cards of prayers that we're going to slip into these bags. So if you'd like to come out and just write a couple of quick notes and drop them in the bags, we'd truly appreciate you doing that. So, did you have your hand up, Joe? Okay. All right. Anything else tonight? Well, let's go to the Lord in prayer. Father God, thank you for saving us. Thank you for opening our eyes to how great you are. Thank you for giving us the strength to serve you and the courage to live for you. Be with us this week, dear God. Please bless us so that we may bless others. Help us, dear Lord, to go out there and to live a life that would make you proud and make others want to become who we are. In your Son's name we pray.